Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video, I'm going to be counting down my top 10 most disappointing figures from 2016. So this is another list I wasn't going to do this year. I was going to leave it out. Last year I made a top 10 worst figures or something like that, and it was fine. It was pretty well received, but it's generally a pretty negative thing to list off the 10 worst of anything, so I try to avoid that kind of thing, but you guys kept asking for it, so I figured I would go ahead and make one. That's why it's a little bit late in the year, but better late than never. At least that's what I'm going to go with. So for this list, I had to consider what I expected the figures to be rather than what they actually were. So what I mean is, the more expensive something is, the easier it is for it to be disappointing. For example, Marvel Legends, sure, they don't compare to certain other brands, but that doesn't make them the most disappointing. So this isn't going to be a list of just 10 Marvel Legends because they're cheaper and lower quality. Most of the Legends are acceptable for the price point, therefore they are not the most disappointing. And we can just jump right in. I'm not going to do honorable mentions because there's really no need for an honorable mentions list on a disappointing figure list. So coming in at number 10, we have most of the DC Multiverse figures. Sure, there were a couple of good ones, but for the most part, this line from Mattel is one giant dud. Almost no effort went into them. The sculpts are bad, the paints are bad, the articulation's bad. Just about everything is bad on most of these figures, so how can you not be disappointed? I know they're supposed to be cheap, but these took cheap to a whole new level, so that's why they made it on the list. Coming in at number 9, we have the DC Collectibles Animated Series Batman figures. Now, nobody loves the animated series more than me, so maybe that's why I found them particularly disappointing, but really it's an objective thing also. The price just isn't where it should be for what we're getting. These figures are especially minimal in the sculpt department, the articulation is considerably basic, and most of them have some accessories, but they're mostly just single molded cheap accessories, so they're way overpriced and they're way under quality in terms of the build quality. So they are by far one of the most disappointing things of the year. Coming in at number 8, we have the Mace X BBS figures. Now, not all of them are absolutely bad. The Armored Batman was mostly okay. Even the regular Batman had mostly good things. But they had enough bad things, and if you look at Superman and Wonder Woman, who were mostly bad things, you can't not put them on the list. It's a very disappointing batch of figures, especially considering the fact that these new versions of these characters all look really good. I don't think anybody saw Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, or Armored Batman and thought, that's a silly design for that movie, I don't like it. I think everybody liked them. And then the figures let us down, so they make the list. Coming in at number 7 is the Figuarts Pikachu. Yes, this guy's fairly inexpensive compared to other Figuarts, but it doesn't really work. It's just not good. It looks a lot like a robot Pikachu from the animated series. It doesn't really work on any level. If you set it there and just don't even look at it so much, it's okay, but if you look at it in any real detail, you're gonna realize it doesn't look very good, and that's mostly because of the failed articulation, so he's very disappointing. Coming in at number 6, we have the Play Arts Sky Arkham Knight Batgirl. So the reason I chose Batgirl is basically just that she was the most prominent one that came out, and it's a very poor attempt at making a figure. The Play Arts Sky line seems to be getting worse and worse when it comes to making non-Square Enix figures, and this is a great example. The articulation is ugly, the sculpts are ugly, and the paints are only suitable, and the price point is higher than ever, so very, very disappointing, mostly for that line in general, but this figure in particular. Coming in at number 5, we have the Variable Action Heroes Pokemon figures, the Pokken Tournament figures. We have Lucario and Mewtwo, and I know many people, just like myself, were very eager to collect a new line of Pokemon figures. The D-Arts and SH Figuarts ones are okay. They hit the spot when we needed them to, but it's kind of time for something new, a little more current, a little more updated. So here come the Variable Action Heroes, and they disappoint on every level except for maybe the sculpt. The articulation just is either non-existent or it doesn't work. They're very small figures at a very high price point. There's not much to like. When you're paying that much for a figure, you expect it to be good, and these were barely acceptable. Very disappointing. Coming in at number 4, we have the Play Arts Sky Steampunk Batman. The Timeless Batman line is one that a lot of Batman fans really could get behind. It's nice to see some new takes on Batman, however crazy it may be. I know a lot of people didn't like it though, and this is a good example of why. Instead of making something that made sense, they just shoehorned Batman details into a really overly designed, overly complicated, and cluttered figure. This guy just had way too much going on to be appreciated and just didn't work. You couldn't pose it, you couldn't really do much of anything with it but have it stand there and look gaudy. Coming in at number 3, we have the Play Arts Kai Bushido Batman. Not quite as gaudy as the Steampunk Batman, but definitely misses the mark in another way. In addition to being overpriced, this figure has almost none of the theme it's supposed to have. Bushido being the code of the samurai, you would expect this Batman to exemplify some traits of a samurai. They got almost none. They included a sword, but didn't put it where a samurai carries his sword. None of the armor was very reminiscent of a samurai. In fact, nothing of it was reminiscent of a samurai other than he had a sword and Bushido was in the name. Such a great opportunity for a cool Batman figure, but they totally missed the mark. Coming in at number 2, we have the SH Figuarts Ultron figure. This was an exclusive and so more expensive than the average SH Figuarts and came with virtually no accessories or quality in general. It had a lousy paint job, lousy sculpt, and even worse articulation. On top of all that, like I said, it was relatively expensive, so it didn't offer anything for the price point. Very disappointing indeed. And coming in at number 1, the infamous Figma Bruce Lee. Some people would argue that it's a good figure, but they are wrong. This figure is an abomination and disrespectful to the legend. He is nowhere near a good likeness. The articulation on this figure is terrible. The paint job on this figure is passable, but that's about it. Nothing on this thing works other than, I guess, the skin tone's kind of nice. And that's not really what we want when we're looking at a collectible action figure of a real life person. It has to look like him, but it doesn't. In fact, it looks like another Bruce Lee by a different name, and that's not a good thing. It doesn't look like the Bruce Lee we're supposed to have, and that makes it very disappointing. So there it is, guys. That's my top 10 list of disappointing figures for 2016. I know it's a little bit late, but I hope you still enjoyed it. I'd like to know which figures disappointed you the most, so in the comment section, go ahead and give me a list. I'm sure your list is going to differ from mine. It's very easy to be disappointed for different reasons. This is a way more subjective list than an objective one, but I tried to keep it as objective as I could, but I know you guys are going to have different things. So don't forget to let me know in the comment section. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And make sure you subscribe so you can see the videos I have. I have new videos up every single day. If you want to see them, click that little bell so you can turn on notifications. And in the meantime, keep collecting.